things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner, is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Hello. Hello. This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to DarkWolf's Den.
The DarkWolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation, don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave, hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness, this is the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live from a secret cave hidden high up in the beautifully snow-covered peaks of the Idaho mountains. That's right. We're ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, April 22nd, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cover a topic that I know you've heard of before, just probably not by this name. This is, of course, the third man factor. Have you ever been in a situation, a dire situation usually, and then all of a sudden a person shows up out of the blue to help you and then disappears? This in of itself is called the third man factor. And we're going to dig a little deeper into some of these stories and see what we can figure out about this amazing phenomenon. All that and more coming up here in just a moment. But first, today in history. On this day in 1056 AD, the supernova of the Crab Nebula was last seen on Earth by the naked eye. That's right, and that is today's Today in History. Wow, that is incredible to be seen with the naked eye from Earth. They say if Betelgeuse ever goes supernova in our lifetime, that we'll be able to read a book at night by its light as if it were the sun of the day. That would be crazy, right? 2 suns in the daytime and 1 sun at night. Wow. That would be absolutely wild. Almost as wild as our topic tonight. And I have to give a quick shout out once again to my buddy Pete over the Creepy Little Book YouTube channel. He covered this topic a week or two ago, and I was looking back through his work and I found it because I was trying to find something to talk about, I'll be honest with you. And when I found this, I was more than intrigued. And upon watching his episode about it, I was really intrigued. So I had to go do some more research for myself, and I found a guy named John Geiger. Mr. Geiger's written a book on this topic. But what is this topic? What are we even talking about, right? Well, think of a time when you had dire circumstances. You're about to die, you're trapped, something major bad has happened, and you're the only one. And then all of a sudden, this second figure shows up to help you out. And then when all is said and done, the figure just disappears. Could it be a good Samaritan? Maybe, but when we hear the case files tonight, we're going to find out it was more than just a good Samaritan. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Geiger. Mr. John, what is the third man factor?
So the question is, who or what is the third man? And there are many other examples in the book, and many others that I've found, countless examples, scores of examples, into the low hundreds of examples of this, of people, normal people, high-achieving people, people in disaster situations, people who are explorers, and all of them have exactly the same story to tell.
Okay, now you really have my attention. And what kind of stories are these that they're telling?
And that is when they most needed help, they were able to find that help. They were able to evoke it. So there's a lot of similarities between these cases. They are often in highly monotonous situations. They're experiencing a number of stresses, not just one particular stress, but it may be cold stress, as in Antarctica. It may be the stressful situations in the sense that there's fire, or they're adrift in the ocean in some cases. They may be at high altitude in many of the cases involving climbers. But so there seems to be a group of stresses or a number of stresses at play, not one particular factor that helps to evoke this experience.
So these are moments when the stress level is through the roof. And it could be, like he said, any kind of stressor, from cold to fire to fear itself, I guess, right? Anything that stresses the human out. And to the degree that it may be a life and death situation. Mr. Geiger, do you have any personal experiences along these lines? Is that what got you into this?
I'm going to start by relating an incident that happened to me when I was 7. I was in southern Alberta. My father's a geologist. He was with the Alberta Research Council, and he was doing a study of the bedrock topography of southern Alberta. And I was, I think it must have been during the summer, so I was kicking along. I was along for the ride. And we were going up it's a very arid part of the province near Lethbridge, and I was going up a steep embankment, and I came face to face with a rattlesnake, which is actually a lot more terrifying than when you see it at the Toronto Zoo. They're mean creatures, and my father was ahead of me, and I was sort of frozen, and the snake was coiled, and I was afraid it was going to lunge at me. And then I had a very odd experience, and I don't know to this day whether it actually happened or whether it was a 7-year-old embellishing what was already a pretty good story. And that is that I had a sense that I was detached from myself. And when I look back at this incident, and to this day when I look back at the incident, I see the snake, and I see my father, and I also see a little boy who would have to have been me. So I was actually seeing this scene, and it's over the years as I've reflected, I've always seen it the same way. I see it from a different perspective. So either I have an inventive imagination, which I hope is true, but also it's quite possible that I had an unusual mental experience that some psychologists have said to me is actually quite common, especially among children who are in abusive situations, that they themselves are able to step back from the abuse that they're suffering and see the events as if it's happening to somebody else. So I do think that it was an actual experience. And I think it predisposed me to the subject of the type of unusual mental events that happen to people, often in wilderness settings.
Now, he believes more along the line of a brain consciousness, whereas, of course, I think this topic's a little bit more of a spiritual-sided thing, but you can come at it from either angle. Either way, these case files are going to be very, very exciting. So you guys have a choice to make by the end of the show. Do you think it is just a contemplation of the brain and just hallucinations, and you'll find out why that makes sense in a minute, or possibly that it's a real spiritual phenomenon? Now, guys, I'm going to present you with some case files and let you be the judge.
So that's just to relate my own beginning and my beginning of my interest in this area. And I really came across this subject, the third man, I was reading Ernest Shackleton, the great Antarctic explorer's narrative South, where he actually describes a very unusual incident that I'm going to talk about in a moment.
And this occurs usually to explorers, hikers, anyone that puts themselves in a situation that could have unforeseen danger.
What interested me is very quickly after discovering Shackleton's encounter with the third man during his escape from Antarctica, which again I'll talk about in a moment, is I discovered other cases around the same time. 1895, Joshua Slocum was undertaking this amazing around the world journey. He had just crossed, he was in the process of crossing the Atlantic Ocean. He had stopped briefly at the Azores and had feasted on various cheeses there, and went back on his sloop and headed towards Gibraltar. And he was suddenly taken very ill. He was unable actually to steer his ship, his vessel, and he found himself actually in a situation that was quite desperate because he was in the middle of a terrible storm. And he essentially collapsed in the cabin. He was not at the wheel. And he became unconscious at some point.
So things are not looking real good for our ship captain here. If he can't steer his ship because he's sick, his ship might hit rocks or go astray.
But then he awoke, and this is what he described. And I'm doing this as a PowerPoint because I want you to actually see the words of these people. When I came to, I saw a tall man at the helm, his rigid hand grasping the spokes of the wheel. He held them as in a vice. This figure reassured him. I have come to aid you. Lie quiet and I will guide your ship tonight. He attributed his survival that night to this intervention by what he called a spook on the ship. And he said he had the feeling that had been in the presence of a friend and a seaman of vast experience. So there's Slocum in 1895.
You know, I will accept the idea of hallucinating someone at the wheel. However, it doesn't answer the actions of that person actually being at the wheel. Like, you can hallucinate all you want, but you're not going to make the ship go this way or that, right? So there's something more going on here. There's a manifestation of a second entity. Even he said there was a spook on the ship that night that sailed it to safety. So, and this is only one account of Joshua Slocum, was again in 1895, 1896, right around there. But it's only one of many accounts.
Charles Lindbergh. I think most of you know the great story of the flight of the Spirit of St. Louis. In 1927, Lindbergh was crossing the Atlantic, the first man to do it solo. And he described later, not in his first book written about when he was very famous, very celebrated, many years later, he sort of came clean about an experience he had had in the fuselage of the Spirit of St. Louis. And that is, he felt that there were presences there, conversing, advising him on his flight, discussing problems of navigation, reassuring him, giving him messages of importance that were not attainable in everyday life.
I really feel that I have experienced this, not in a fear sort of way, not in a stressed sort of way, but I've always felt that there's this second entity that I'm talking to all the time. You can call it God, you can call it an angel, you can call it a guardian angel, you can call it a ghost spirit, or whatever title and tag you want to slap onto it. I have always felt that there's this entity that I converse with on a regular basis, and at times I feel that it converses back with me, especially when I used to drive all over, all the time, by myself, just drive round and round the town doing different things, and I would just always be by myself, and there was just this mound of synchronicities that would happen, like the universe was talking to me, but more so, it more than once felt like that there was a second person in the vehicle almost conversing with me at times. I would dare say conversing with me at times, so I can fully comprehend exactly what Mr. Lindbergh is referencing here, because I do believe I've experienced that myself on more than one occasion.
And he flew successfully. He became an instant hero and celebrity around the world, one of the most famous men of his time, and maybe of all time. And later he reflected on this experience. I've never believed in apparitions, but how can I explain the forms I carried with me through so many hours of that day? Transparent forms in human outline, voices that spoke with authority and clearness.
I don't know about seeing transparent forms in the vehicle with me. I don't think I've ever quite experienced that. But I have heard the voices that speak with both authority and clearness.
And then Shackleton, and his story is one of the most harrowing of all. You probably, again, Shackleton's a very well-known figure these days, especially.
And for those who aren't familiar with the story of Shackleton and the failed Antarctic expedition, this is a story of true heroism and almost death, and a story that, if nowhere else, I would almost expect to find this type of phenomenon.
His ship was trapped in ice endurance. The men were forced to abandon or desert the ship, which was crushed. They dragged small lifeboats across the ice floes, the rotting ice, and finally made an escape from the Antarctic ice flows to Elephant Island. He left most of them in there, and then he took a small party, and they traveled across the South Atlantic to a place called South Georgia, which is a British possession in South Atlantic. There was a whaling station there, and he knew that he would be aided at that point. But it was during that crossing in a small boat, the James Caird, and then landing in the midst of a hurricane at South Georgia, he and a handful of his men then were forced to, two other men were forced to cross the mountainous interior of South Georgia, and it had never been charted, so he made his way with these two others.
So their ship has been crushed. They've made a harrowing escape. They've left most of their men back on Elephant Island for rescue, and now they're headed to climb an uncharted mountain range in order to get help on the other side. This is already an amazing story, and if you want to read the whole breakdown of it, it's available pretty much everywhere. But this is a story that only gets crazier from here.
And over the course of that final leg of the journey, they each had, independently of the other, a sense of an unseen being.
This is a really intriguing part of this case file. They each independently had the exact same sense of an unseen being that had joined the expedition with them.
Who had joined them and who was urging them along. And one after the other realized that they'd all had the same experience, that there was a fourth presence that had joined them on that journey. And this is Shackleton's reference to it.
And again, I'm amazed that every one of the team, all three of them, would have the exact same hallucination. Quite intriguing to me that they all hallucinated that there was an extra person, that they all independently verified at least some degree of interaction with, right? To the degree that even Mr. Shackleton recorded his experiences. Here it is in his own words.
During, in his wonderful narrative, South, that he had, during that long and racking march of 36 hours over the unnamed mountains and glaciers of South Georgia, it seemed to me often that we were four, not three. This was the fourth presence.
On more than one occasion, he said it appeared that they were four and not three. But when asked about it, now this is the really intriguing thing. Later on, when asked about this in an interview, here's what he said.
This is an interview that appeared in the Daily Telegraph. In your book, you speak of a fourth presence. He nodded his head. Do you care to speak about that? And Shackleton became restless and very ill at ease. He said, no, none of us cares to speak about that. There are some things which can never be spoken of. Almost a hint about them comes perilously close to sacrilege.
So he became restless and ill at ease and really, really kind of concerned religiously, in a manner of speaking, to talk about this because, you know, it was that real to him. And it's when you have these later psychological effects like that on a person that, you know, it truly was something that really happened to them, something at least they believed to be very, very true. Like we've seen in many case files, after the incident, the person changes their life, or it has a very incredibly meaningful impact on their life, this being none the different. Mr. Shackleton really didn't want to discuss it after he had looked back on it himself and realized the implications of what this could be.
So this, Shackleton was embarrassed, I think, that he had let this little piece of information, this highly personal piece of information out.
I don't know about embarrassment, but it definitely shook him to the core into something that really was personal and meant something to him.
But it did inspire, the fact that he did publish it did inspire one of the most famous passages in one of the most famous poems of the last century, and that is Eliot's The Wasteland. Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. So Eliot had read Shackleton's narrative, and he recognized this as a very interesting idea, incorporated it into The Wasteland, and the phenomenon has been known ever since, when it's known at all, as either the third man syndrome or the third man factor.
which of course is the title of our episode tonight. But it brings in the question, who is the third man, or what is the third man? That still hasn't been answered. Is it perhaps Jesus Christ? Is it perhaps a guardian angel? Is it perhaps a spirit of a loved one that's just watching over us, a grandmother, aunt, uncle, best friend, whoever it may have been? Or perhaps it is our brain that is just craving companionship. Now, this one I don't really agree with very much, as you guys know, I'm sure. And we'll hear more about in the second half about how it's possibly consciousness and the brain craving a companion. The problem I have with that, and I'll again get back into this in the second half, but the main problem I have with this is a lot of people have a companion with them already. It's not the second man factor, it is the third man factor. So I don't see the craving of companionship as being a reason that the mind would click in and start tricking us to that degree. I just don't think that's what's going on here. I think there really is a spiritual intervention going on, but once again, that is my opinion. That is not my authoritative speak. But let's get back to a couple more case files before we have to go to the break.
And I'm just going to quickly run over a number of other cases and talk about what I think may be happening to these people. Frank Smythe, one of the great early British Everest climbers, 1933, was in the death zone of Everest with another man, Eric Shipton, who was unable to continue. So Shipton remained at the tent. And
now, Everest is one of, if not the most dangerous mountains in the world to climb. There are places where bodies still lie frozen on the mountain to this day. As a matter of fact, some of them are actually used for landmarks while making the trip, the climb up. But this is no easy feat by any means.
And Smythe carried on by himself, and his interaction with the third man is quite a well-known story, because he said not only did he feel during his climb as he struggled closer and closer within 1,000 feet of the summit of Everest, not only did he feel that he was getting that he was accompanied by someone, that he had help, encouragement, someone along with him.
And I'll give it to you. This is a one man making the climb and having this experience, but I still am not going to rule out the spiritual aspect of it myself. But just the same, this is one man's story that gets pretty crazy.
But at some point, after he gave up on the making the summit and was started back down, he sat down and had a Kendall mint cake, a mint bar, and he actually broke it and shared it carefully and evenly with his companion. So the sense that someone was there with him was so vivid, that this helpful friend was so vivid, that he actually shared his food, or attempted to share his food with this being.
One could argue that this is delirium, but again, I totally disagree based on the other case files that we've also heard and the multitude of others that do exist. But this was so real to the guy that he attempted to share his food with this entity. This entity that had helped him and been a companion to him the whole time. Have you guys ever felt like that there is a second entity there with you when you're alone, that you feel like not a threatening one, but an entity that's almost friendly, that you could share a conversation or a meal with, right?
Enzio Tierra in 1953, a Finn who was actually in the French Foreign Legion, and he and a Swedish legionnaire decided they didn't want to serve in Indochina, and so abandoned the ship that was taking them to Vietnam, and threw some food and a small raft overboard. And they were in a busy shipping lane in the Strait of Malacca, and they thought they would be collected within minutes, if not hours. Well, in fact, they ended up spending 33 days on this raft. At the end of this experience, he weighed 56 pounds when he was rescued. He was drifting across the Indian Ocean, and in his book, Raft of Despair, which this wonderful cover I've included, he said he didn't pray, and I'm not a religious man usually, but for the whole voyage I'd had the strange feeling that someone else was with me, watching over me and keeping me safe from harm.
And it sounds like the third man has turned on the break music here, so that means we've got to go ahead and take a network break, ladies and gentlemen. So we will be right back with the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Show and even more case files of the third man factor right after these messages. Don't you touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. Are you enjoying tonight's Darkwolf's Den show? If you are, and you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of common sense radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. I'll return again tomorrow night, Friday, April 23rd, as we explore together a road trip journey along Route 66. That's right, we are going to take a look at some of the hot spots, some of the tourist destinations and roadside attractions that have been drawing people for years. Can you believe it? A road trip. Sandy B ought to be happy about that. Great to see you tonight. Ollier, Greg, Dave Tate, Earth Daughter, Alva Yoder, My Life, DIY, Juanito, 1975. How about that Dogecoin, huh? Oh, where is it going to go? I think it's going to go down, go up, go down, go up. You just never know with Doge, but it's exciting to say the least. And then Saturday night, come along with me as we explore down the rabbit hole of something. I don't know what it is because I still have not put the schedule out. I got to tell you, unfortunately, I got hit with one of those migraine headaches today. I mean, a serious one. It like knocked me down. Finally, after several Excedrins, I actually feel fine. So if anybody knows what Saturday night's or Sunday night schedule is, please let me know in the chat. Doge at 17, is that what it's down to now? I hope not. I really hope not. Let's see. Let's pull up the schedule. I know it's here someplace because I really don't know. I literally spent one of those, afternoons with a cold pack over my forehead as I was literally suffering from one of those migraine attacks. Saturday night is something. I don't know what. Let's see. Is this it? I think so. Saturday night? No, that's last week. What are we doing Saturday night? AJ, what about SafeMoon? I've been looking at it, actually. You're the second person to ask me about it, Juanito, 1975. Dogecoin on Saturday, Tom McDonald Sunday. Is that what we're doing? Is that what the schedule is? I don't think so. We'll figure it out. We'll be here tomorrow night. Back to Jerry Hicks and the Darkwolf's Den.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Oz.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Darkwolf's Den.
The Darkwolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And welcome back to the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Show for Thursday, April 22nd, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing the third man factor. Could it be a guardian angel, or could it be all in our heads? There's so many amazing case files that we went over in the first half, and we've only begun to scratch the surface of this incredible phenomenon. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's jump right back into the topic with our guest speaker tonight, Mr. John Geiger.
Hermann Buhl, a great Austrian climber. During those hours of extreme tension, I had extraordinary feeling that I was not alone. I had a partner with me, looking after me, taking care of me, belaying me. I knew it was imagination, but the feeling persisted. He was the first man to summit Nagna Parbat, one of the tallest mountains, one of the top 10 in the world. And he barely escaped from that alive. But through the entire ascent, he had this sense that there was someone helping him along.
I like the logical aspect of this. He believed it was his imagination, but still it was persistent. I mean, even to the point that maybe it wasn't his imagination, right?
Bill King, a great man, still alive, probably the most famous sailor in Great Britain. He was doing a solo circumnavigation. He was going through Cape Horn and the terrible seas there. It was a situation where he couldn't see the horizon. He couldn't get a read on the sun. He didn't know exactly where he was. He was going through an area where there were small islands and reefs. He was in very serious danger, and he carried on. And through that situation, he was calmed. He might have panicked. He was calmed. And that was because, again, he was joined by someone who was helping him, sharing in the tasks. He didn't feel that his mind had become deranged. He was quite certain that he was not alone.
It amazes me how many of these people are of very sound mind, yet seem to be reporting this very same phenomenon.
Nicholas Tu, a Vietnamese boat person who made a harrowing escape in 1987 in a small raft with a large number of other people. And there, before he was finally rescued, again, the same story. Here, not an explorer, not an adventurer, somebody who was trying to escape for a better life. He seemed that he was joined by a presence. He thought it was his brother, again, comforting me at the toughest moment of his life.
This one intrigues me because he specifically said he felt that it was his brother, like the spirit from the other side helping him.
Stephanie Schwab, a great diver, an American, originally from Germany, also had the same sense. She was in an underwater cave system in the Bahamas, and she lost her the guideline, the only way that she would be able to get out of this incredible maze of caves.
And of course, this situation is very dire. If you can't find your guideline back out, you're going to be trapped in this cave system and most likely die under the water.
And while she was there, she again began to panic. She thought she wasn't going to survive. Her air was running out. And then, once again, she had a sense that there was someone with her. She thought it was her husband, Rob, who had died a few months earlier.
Again, they pinpoint a specific person that they feel is there helping them, a person nonetheless that is already passed over.
But she was given advice, and she calmed down, and she began to methodically look for the guideline, and with time she was able to find it and to escape.
And another life saved by this third man phenomenon. And once again, she felt that it was her husband who had passed away already. She felt the spirit around her. It's really interesting because the other guy said he felt that it was his brother who also had passed away. So is the spirit world interacting to help save us at times of our most dire need?
Jerry Linenger, an American astronaut, veteran of 2 shuttle missions, who had also spent a number of years on years, it must have seemed like years, months on the Mir space station, which was well beyond even then its normal and anticipated lifespan. And Linenger has a PhD and a medical degree. He's an absolutely remarkable, typical of astronauts, an extremely high-achieving guy, very serious guy, very scientifically minded. He, on Mir, after a series of near catastrophic incidents on Mir, including a fire that raged out of control for an hour, he had a sense that he was joined by an unseen presence. He thought that it was his father who had died a number of years earlier. And this helped him to cope with the situation that he found himself in.
Okay, 3 in a row here we've had that seem to feel that it is a spirit from the other side that is intervening to help them out. Could that really be what's going on here? Could the spirit world be still helping and interacting with the real world?
And Ron DeFrancesco, who's a Torontonian now, at the time of 9/11 was actually living in New York and working in the South Tower of the World Trade Center. He's a money market trader, and he found himself trapped above the point of impact in the South Tower.
Of course, we all remember that tragic day, and there were millions of harrowing stories that come out of that day. But this one it's mind-blowing, guys.
He was in a stairwell. It was filled with smoke. It was blocked by debris. There were a group of people around him. Some of those people were unconscious. Some of those people had given up and were sobbing sort of uncontrollably. And he basically felt that this was it, that he would not be able to escape this situation. And suddenly he felt, again, that there was a presence there. And often in these cases, the presence doesn't just provide encouragement, a sense of calm, coping, but rather give specific advice and directions. And for Ron, those directions were to get up, to keep going, that he could escape from the World Trade Center. And so he did. He did what few people would ever do. He went into the flames. He covered his head with his arms, and he ran into the flames, and he was able to break through this debris that was there and to get down below the fire and below the point of impact. And the lights were on, and everything appeared normal below that point. And he was urged to hurry on. At that point, the presence left him, and he was able to get out. And he was the last man out of the South Tower of the World Trade Center before it collapsed on September 11th.
So what encouraged him to get up and keep going enough to even run through flames and become the last person to make it out of the tower alive? That's amazing. How much spiritual interaction was going on that day? We have heard a lot of different things about that day from people who coincidentally, and I use that word lightly, missed their flight or weren't at work that day, to the point of people having incidents like this where spiritual guidance was provided to them in their most weakened and threatened moment. But what's really going on here, John? What is causing all of these people to experience the third man factor, in your opinion?
And what is happening to them? Well, obviously we've been talking about spiritual matters in this session, and a number of the people I've spoken to who've had this experience felt that it was an intervention by a guardian angel. So for them, it was proof of the existence of guardian angels and an affirmation of their religious faith.
Could that be the case? Could guardian angels be intervening in humankind and helping certain people to continue on in the world and do things that they must do?
Lynn Robertson, who with her family was adrift in the Pacific Ocean for many weeks before they were finally rescued, she felt that Jesus Christ had intervened and was actually there in the raft at one point where a water spout threatened to swamp them.
And I know a couple Christian people who would argue 100% that this is not only a possibility, but exactly what happened.
In the case of Ron DeFrancesco, he felt that it was an angel. I asked him, what was this? How do you explain it? He said that an angel had come to help him.
So many people believe that this is a religious intervention, say an intervention from God or a guardian angel of some type, or an angel at all. Could that be the case, or is it a religious overtone on what's actually going on?
So that is certainly one interpretation. And if you think about the Aboriginal spirit quests, you think about the desert monks who retreated into the deserts and would come back with stories of meeting great spirits or God, or, it does fit with some of the even tribal practices that we're aware of.
So this phenomenon seems to be happening to anybody of any culture, race, gender, or anything else. Just humans in general.
There are also psychological theories. MacDonald Critchley, a British neurologist, was one of the first to study this, a scientist to study this in a serious way. In 1955, he published a paper. He called it The Idea of a Presence, and he actually gave it its first description, scientific description, that it's a sense, a feeling or impression, sometimes amounting to a delusion that the person concerned is not alone, that there's another individual with them.
And of course, I disagree with any psychological explanation of this. I think this is literally the spirit world interacting with the real world. But of course, a scientist isn't going to say that, right? A materialist scientism practitioner, they're going to say something like it's all in the brain or it's just your imagination, right?
Another Julian Jaynes, an American psychologist, in a very controversial book about bicameralism, proposed this idea of the bicameral mind. His explanation for this phenomenon is that it's a right brain intrusion into the left hemisphere, that this is the God brain speaking.
The problem I have with this is the example of the multiple hikers in Antarctica, I believe it was, that was having an issue getting over the mountain, and they all experienced the exact same fourth entity in their crew. Now, if it's just in the brain, it's not going to be experienced by all members of the group, maybe one or two, but not all members. Yet that's exactly what happened. So I don't think that is a valid answer to the cases. I think that's ignoring some of the evidence to make it fit. But that's my opinion.
Peter Sudfeld, who's a professor of psychology at the University of British Columbia, said that the impression or help of encouragement by this phantom presence lends the experience great psychological immediacy. He felt that it's a coping mechanism. This is actually a human psychological response to extreme stress. And very recently, a number of neurologists have been looking at this. In one case, they actually use an electrical stimulus to explore the brain of a woman who is suffering from epileptic seizures. And at a certain point, they were able to actually induce a sense of a presence in a clinical setting. But the presence was frightening to her. It didn't have all of the layer of meaning that I've just described. So it was in a sense a similar experience. There was a being there with her. When they removed the stimulus, the being disappeared. But it was not a helpful companion. It was not a friend.
Which really makes me think that what they did was not what is actually going on. Yes, just because it's somewhat similar to the phenomenon, it's missing a variety of the aspects, mainly the helpful aspect of every case file we've heard tonight. As a matter of fact, most of these case files involve somebody calming the person, not inducing fear, which this experiment did.
This is the part of the brain that's involved in telling me where I end and where you begin. So it's concerned with our self-perception, where placing us in the world. So there does appear to be an angel switch. There is something in our brain that allows us to evoke a sense of another being there. But what is interesting is it doesn't take us all the way. It doesn't explain why that being is a friend, a companion, a helper. And it doesn't explain why, fundamentally, we all appear to have a sense that we're not alone. Thank you very much.
I personally don't think that this would be something that my brain would create on my behalf as a coping mechanism, as an ability to deal with whatever situation I'm in, to calm myself, if you will. I don't see that at all being the case, especially from the case files that we've heard tonight. I think seriously, in my own opinion, that this is a true spiritual intervention, whether it be an angel, a guardian angel, a god, or just a spirit of some type. I truly believe that this is spiritual intervention in humankind. But what do you think is the third man factor? Do you think it is spiritual intervention? Do you think we all have guardian angels? Do you think perhaps there are those that pass over that keep an eye on us throughout the rest of our life? Or perhaps it is just something that is all in our heads and something that we've made up as a coping mechanism through evolutionary means. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, listen to the case files, apply a little common sense, and you be the judge. we got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Darkwolf's Den Show for Thursday, April 22nd, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing, but don't you worry, the weekend fun is only just begun. That's right. Now that we've got the weekend kicked off right, our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit's going to take over for the next 3 days with the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show. That's right, guys. These are shows you do not want to miss. If you've enjoyed the Darkwolf's Den Show, do make sure you come back 7 p.m. Pacific, 10, 9 Central for the next 3 days. On Friday, April 23rd, 2021, for instance, our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit is going to be talking about getting your kicks on Route 66. That's right, this was an iconic drive-through in America at one time. And a drive that even I, to this day, hope I may still end up being able to make. There are a lot of fun stories coming up on Friday, April 23rd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10, 9 Central, right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show. Then on Saturday, April 24th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10, 9 Central, our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit jumps back on the airwaves again for a discussion on social distancing. But it'll be a discussion nonetheless that'll be done Rippin' Rabbit Hole style. We are, of course, socially distanced, being that this is on radio and YouTube and digital assets, but is it even right to do social distancing, or is it a conspiracy against us all? That's what I think it is, but let's see what AJ's got to say about it on Saturday, April 24th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10, 9 Central, right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network. Then on Sunday, April 25th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10, 9 Central, he's going to follow up the discussion on social distancing with a discussion on science, the science of science, right? Science, one of my absolute favorite topics. Is there a conspiracy to do double science? Is there a way to try to trick the people with false science? I think that that's what's going on in today's society, but again, that's my opinion, but we'll have to see what AJ's got to say about the topic of science on Sunday, April 25th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10, 9 Central. And that's going to round out the weekend here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio and RippinRabbitHole.com. Speaking of RippinRabbitHole.com, you guys know that is my absolute favorite website, right? Well, one of my two favorite websites. I'm a pretty big fan of imec.world too, but on the RippinRabbitHole.com, you can go over there and sign up for your Backstage Pass, and you'll be able to join all the fun features on the site. Like what, Jerry? Well, like the newsletter that you're going to start getting every Wednesday when you sign up for this Backstage Pass. It has all the Darkwolf's Dens and the Rippin' Rabbit Holes coming up all weekend long, every weekend, because we do have different new topics every weekend. That's right. Then while you're over there, also make sure you drop down the rabbit hole. This is our social media alternative over there, and something that I am really, really glad that we have access to, because you know how it's getting out there in the other world. Then, ladies and gentlemen, while you're all over there, also make sure you pop into the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. As a matter of fact, if you hurry over there now, you'll be able to get signed up and join me here in just a couple minutes backstage at the 24/7 Backstage Lounge, where me and the rest of the rabbits will be back there conversing and having a good old time. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for us tonight here in the den. We really appreciate every last one of you guys being here with us. We could not do this without you. It really is an honor and a pleasure to do this for you guys every single week. Twice a week, nonetheless. And we're coming up on our year mark here in May, you guys. I cannot believe it. We are within a month, less than a month, to our year mark here on the DarkWolf's Den Show. So it is again an honor and a pleasure to have every last one of you guys here. On behalf of AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, Michael Musco, Chick Mandela Effect, Walt House, Mr. Tom Baillies with Red Shed Studios. He's the one that makes this amazing music we're listening to right now. All of our background music here in the Wolf Den. It is a pleasure and an honor to work with them. Red Shed Studios, once again, Mr. Tom Baillies, huge shout out over there. And shout out to everybody who has helped us out through this entire year. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all these folks, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next time, guys, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. How? Yeah. That's right. Now, wow, 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 wow.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.